I never thought one careless joke could end a marriage, but looking back, it wasn't the joke that destroyed everything. It was what the joke revealed. My name is Lena Parker, and until 3 weeks ago, I was married to Ethan Parker, the kind of man people describe as steady, reliable, maybe even boring if they don't understand what real commitment looks like. Girls' night was supposed to be harmless. Wine, laughter, the usual venting. My friends and I had been doing it for years, ever since college. That night, we were at Maya's apartment. She was kicked off. Glasses refilled a little too often. Conversation drifted, like it always does, toward relationships. Who's happy? Who's not? Who's settling? I had already had more to drink than I should have. And when Maya joked about upgrading her boyfriend, I laughed and said it. I swear, I said, smirking, sometimes. I wonder what it would be like to be with a better man. The room went quiet for half a second, then erupted in laughter. Someone clinked a glass. Someone else said, "Girl, don't we all?" I laughed too, louder than anyone, playing it off like sarcasm. But deep down, I felt that sharp little thrill. That comes from saying something you've thought but never admitted out loud. If you've ever said something like that, pause for a second. Boldly ask yourself this: were you joking? Or were you testing a truth you were afraid to see if this moment already hits close to home? Tap like so this story can reach the people who need it most. Ethan wasn't supposed to know. Girls' night stays at girls' night, right? That's what I told myself. I didn't flirt with anyone. I didn't cheat. I didn't even mention another man by name. It was just words tossed into the air, dissolved by laughter. Or so I thought when I got home. Ethan was asleep. I showered, crawled into bed, and pressed myself against his back. He didn't stir. I remember feeling oddly irritated by that. Like even his sleep was another sign of how disconnected we'd become. We hadn't been fighting. We hadn't been unhappy in any dramatic way. We were quiet, predictable. Safe. The next morning, everything felt normal. Coffee, brief kiss, him grabbing his jacket, me reminding him about the dinner we had planned with his sister on Sunday. No tension, no suspicion, nothing. What I didn't know was that Maya had posted a short clip on her private story. Just a few seconds. Wine glasses, laughter, my voice in the background. Clear as day. What would it be like to be with a better man? She didn't tag me. She didn't mean harm. But one of Ethan's co-workers followed her. Someone who thought it would be helpful to show him. I didn't find out any of this until later. That evening, Ethan came home early. He didn't say much, just nodded, went straight to the bedroom, and closed the door. I assumed he'd had a rough day. I gave him space. That's what you do in a mature marriage, right? You don't push. You wait. By dinner, the silence felt heavier. He sat across from me, barely touching his food. His jaw was tight, like he was chewing on words instead of pasta. Finally, I asked, "Are you okay?" He looked up, and for the first time in years, his eyes didn't feel familiar. "Do you think I'm a good man?" he asked. The question caught me off guard. I laughed softly, nervously. "Of course I do." Why would you even ask that? He didn't smile. He reached into his pocket and placed his phone on the table, screen facing up. The video was paused. My voice hung there, frozen in time. I felt my stomach drop. Before I could explain, he said quietly, "I didn't know I was competing." That sentence did more damage than any shouting ever could. I rushed into defense mode, talking too fast, tripping over excuses. It was just a joke. You know how girls talk. I didn't mean you. I didn't mean anyone. He listened. He always listened. That was the thing about Ethan. He let people finish, even when they were hurting him. Then he said, "A joke is supposed to be funny for everyone. If you were Ethan in that moment, what would you have felt first? Anger, betrayal, or embarrassment?" Drop a comment and tell me which emotion would hit you hardest. We went to bed that night without resolving anything. No argument, no raised voices. Just space between us that felt wider than the mattress. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing apologies in my head, convinced that by morning, we'd talk it through like adults. But morning didn't come. With the conversation. It came with an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside were divorce papers. At the top, in clean black ink, was Ethan's signature. And just like that, the man I joked about being better had decided he deserved better. If this story is stirring something uncomfortable, type the word honesty in the comments sometimes. Admitting the truth is the first step toward understanding it. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at those papers like they might rearrange themselves if I waited long enough. Divorce felt like an overreaction. That was my first thought. No affair, no screaming matches, no betrayal in the traditional sense, just a stupid comment, taken out of context. That's what I kept telling myself as I called Ethan's phone again and again. Each call going straight to voicemail. By noon, reality started to sink in. Ethan wasn't reacting. He was deciding. When he finally answered that evening, his voice was calm, almost distant. "I'm staying with my brother," he said. "My lawyer will contact you." Lawyer. That word landed harder than the divorce papers. "Ethan, please," I said. "You're throwing away yours over one joke." There was a pause on the line. Then he said something that still echoes in my head. "It wasn't the joke, Lena. It was the comfort you had saying it." That's when I realized this wasn't about girls' night. It was about how long he'd been feeling quietly insufficient in his own marriage. How many times he'd sensed that I was comparing him to some imaginary version of a man who didn't exist except in my head and my conversations. Over the next few days, everything moved fast. Emails, appointments, splitting accounts, dividing. Routines we'd built over a decade. Friends took sides without asking for the full story. Some told me Ethan was too sensitive. Others said I'd finally pushed him too far. The truth sat somewhere in between, heavy and uncomfortable. I tried to talk to him one last time before things became irreversible. We met at a small cafe we used to love. Same table, same window view, different people. "I never cheated," I said, desperation leaking into my voice. "You know that." "I know," he replied, "and somehow that makes it worse." He explained it slowly, carefully, like he didn't want to wow me even now. "When you said you wondered about a better man, you told everyone in that room that I wasn't enough. You laughed about it. You normalized it. And I realized I was the only one taking our marriage seriously. I wanted to argue. I wanted to list everything I'd done right. Loyalty, years together, shared memories. But none of that addressed the core issue, respect. I chipped away at it without even realizing it. If you're watching this and thinking, it was just words, ask yourself this: would you feel the same if those words were said about you? If this perspective adds value, consider sharing this story with someone who might need to hear it, especially a friend who treats commitment lightly. The divorce finalized quietly. No courtroom drama. No ugly scenes. Just signatures and silence. Ethan never spoke badly about me. That, more than anything, hurt. It meant he didn't need to destroy me to move on. He simply stepped away. The hardest part wasn't losing him. It was losing the version of myself who believed love could survive carelessness. I replay that night in my head more than I'd like to admit. The laughter, the smirk, the confidence with which I dismissed the man who'd stood by me for years. People ask me if I regret it. That's a complicated question. I regret the entitlement. I regret assuming safety meant permanence. I regret thinking emotional loyalty mattered less than physical loyalty. If you could go back and change one sentence you said in a moment of ego or frustration, would you comment below with the word regret if you believe words can change lives or end them? What I've learned since is uncomfortable but necessary. Respect isn't loud. It's shown in private conversations, in how you speak about your partner when they're not there, especially when they're not there. Ethan didn't leave because he wanted revenge. He left because he finally saw himself clearly and realized he deserved to be spoken about with the same loyalty he gave. Sometimes the person who walks away isn't weak. They're just done negotiating their worth. I'm not telling this story to paint myself as the villain or Ethan as the hero. I'm telling it because too many people think betrayal only counts when bodies are involved. Emotional disrespect cuts just as deep, and sometimes deeper. because it lingers long after apologies are offered. If you were Ethan, would you have stayed and tried to fix it? Or would you have walked away the moment you realized how you were? Being seen, you want to hear real opinions, start a discussion in the comments, and explain your choice. This experience changed how I see relationships, commitment, and the weight of casual words. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this: never joke about replacing someone who's still choosing you every day. If this story made you think, like this video, leave a comment answering this question: where is the line between a joke and disrespect? And subscribe for more real stories that explore the quiet moments that change everything.